I want to hear the origin story of Sea Wife. But I was so struck, I think, so struck as a woman who wants to write and has kids, by how central that conflict is for Juliet. And right there at the beginning of the novel, when she says, looking at her closet, I'm a mother. Gradually, I just gave them all away, all my spaces, one by one, down to the very last closet. And I guess I wanted, maybe that's a place to start, is how Juliet became your protagonist, and these questions of creativity and maternity,
Yeah.
and the weaving together of those things.
It's a great place to start, and it's definitely a huge part of its origin as well. Yeah, that giving up spaces has been resonant to me lately, reading, because of the way we're all living right now. But we'll get to that as well. But the sense of how hard it is for a woman to keep a space for herself, and how it's almost feels political to keep that space for oneself, especially as a writer. I felt, you know, certainly I have my own experience with it, but I also know that just generations and generations of women have been, you know, the expectations are to give up your spaces. And, you know, Sea Wife is some, this Juliet's issues are things I definitely relate to, but they're also issues I've talked to many other women about. And some of my poetic heroes, you know, that do get a little bit of a nod in the book via Juliet, and Sexton is one, but or somebody like Sylvia Plath is a better known person, were all very much, I think when we look back at them, finally extremely stressed by the tension between their motherhood and their artistic lives. So those are artistic life or private life, you know, or any space that's kept for oneself. I think that women, this is also related to an issue that comes up for Juliet. Later, she talks about her postpartum depression. I think something that really happens there is the giving up of the space, of one's own space, and the loss of self, and then the kind of emptiness that comes around that feeling where you're like, I'm supposed to be loving this child, but I'm loving this child at the expense of any space for myself. And women are, I think any woman listening to this, and men too probably understand, is just you're encouraged to give and give and give, and then you reach a point where you look around and you're even unhealthy at that point that you have given up your spaces. So it was definitely a preoccupation in the book.
It's interesting. I mean, there are various things that makes me the strands. One is the importance for you of her dissertation and of poetry, and specifically you mentioned Anne Sexton, who she refers to in the book, and of course who was famously, like Plath, a poet, a mother, and a depressive, and in both cases they lost their lives to that depression. They committed suicide, and I wondered, it's interesting that you made her a scholar of poetry. I mean, I guess she's also a poet, but she's primarily a scholar of poetry. And I wondered what that difference meant for you.
I'm not sure. I think I related to the dissertation as kind of an example or a symbol of these projects long projects we get into as people, and then have to see through for. So I think that dissertation was almost more easy for me to see than, say, like if she were, a poet, she could finish some poems or something. The dissertation would take a long time, and there's so many examples of all but dissertation people like herself. She got the PH but not the D.
Right.
So
right.
I related to that. I've seen people go through that many times. I don't have a PhD myself. but I've seen it. So it seemed like it was such a long, arduous process. And she loses her ability to believe in the project. And it's hard to tell, does she lose her ability to believe in the project or in herself as the author of the project? And then she also, there's a kind of like jibes at, academic life too in there. It's hard to, loving literature doesn't necessarily translate to ease in writing a dissertation about it.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting too, that I think there's a moment where she says something like it was too much effort to try to be special, right?
Yeah.
That there's some way in which to be somebody who's that a mother, because another part of the early in the book is where she says we fell into these gender roles that I thought had been had sort of were antediluvian. It wasn't anticipated to fall into these traditional gender roles that Juliet and Michael, before they leave on their trip, had fallen into, and the gender roles are utterly, the maternal role is utterly consuming for her. But I also want to ask, because when they go on the yacht, then she gives up all space too. I mean, there's not even a closet, but somehow that seems a liberation.
Oh, yeah, I have so much to say about that too, just in terms of what that means and kind of, what quarantine feels like and being on a ship. But it's interesting. Right, exactly. Because I'm experiencing that right now. Like, I mean, I'll just jump into it, but it's I guard my writing space so closely because I know from all my foremothers that I have to do that, and I have support to do that. So wonderful. And then, but then when those tenuous boundaries are completely disappear, as they do now in quarantine, or as they do on a boat, for sure. Then what? How do you keep your space? That's a great question. And I'm still really trying to figure that one out personally right now. But I also, I think that it was felt like a lot of dramatic potential to put people who just by nature of who they are going to have a hard time with boundaries, which you could say is anyone who lives in a family, and then put them all into a space where there's no physical boundaries. And I have seen sailing families, and I've seen the way that they take space for themselves. And I think that they do eventually learn how to do that. But since Juliet and Michael don't have much sailing experience, and they kind of rush into this, optimistically rush into this trip, I don't think that they're prepared. I think there are ways, if we're speaking about real sailing families, to prepare and to claim space and to, I've seen, when I was researching the book, there were kids who used to go up the mast. Like, you think it's just like, oh, it's a tiny boat.
Private time at the top of the mast.
Yes. And a family told me, I can't remember who, but that they used to hang their little child from the mast. And, I mean, in a little seat. So
like the thing you hang in the door frame that
yes. And the child loved it. And of course, wouldn't you kind of love that? Not the top of the mast, but and that's how that child had some space, and the kid and the parents had space from them. And I think people who live in that situation actually do successfully find that out. I think when we have our houses or even our apartments, maybe less so to a degree apartments, but we find a lot of ways to hide from one another. And it sounds kind of pejorative right now, but I'm really having such epiphanies about it these days. But it is sometimes very healthy to be able to have those spaces, but of course we abuse them. And we, say for example with work, which I miss right now, but have probably in the past kind of also used to create space from myself, from others. And when we do maybe sometimes take too much space away from one another. So we're all having this experience of boat life right now, where it's like, oh, wow, you are everywhere, you again. And I think we can probably all agree that there are some moments of that is just incredibly beautiful. There's this sort of like, moments where you feel like a kind of radical presence of somebody you love. And then there's the opposite too, of missing yourself, missing your space.
I'm struck. I mean, I mentioned this to you before, and you said yes. Others have been saying it too, but how prescient this sea wife feels. I mean, maybe you can tell us about where the idea came from, where what the research was like, but also, I mean, you wrote it in a way in relation to the last election, right? One of the things one of the wedges that has been driven between Juliet and Michael is the fact that they fell on different sides of this very divisive national election in 2016. So that was wise, but perhaps not entirely prescient, because by the time you finished the book, that election was well behind us. But certainly this sort of quarantine, this idea. I mean, this is a sort of existential novel about human dynamics and knowing oneself and knowing others. Cast on a boat, but it might have been cast in quarantine. It's about what happens, which is what's happening to so many of us now. What is left when all the trappings fall away?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. Maybe, I don't know if you want to start with how the whole idea for the book came to you, and maybe how it's evolved as the world around us has evolved. I mean, how you're feeling about it now.
Yes, I should have taken notes while you were talking. I was like, oh, that's so true, so true. Yeah, well, I can start with some of that. I'll start with going back to the ideas behind the book. And as I was writing, I kind of got the narrative idea in about 2014, but at the same time, this, Claire. I mean, you've got your plot, but that's like, it's nothing if it's not animated by what you care about and what you're preoccupied by. So I would say that those things were almost more in the foreground for me, as I think they've been for a lot of us. It's no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, there's been so much change and so much turmoil, and so many shattering of norms, and definitely a lot of polarization. And I don't know, it hurts. It hurts to see it and to experience it, to feel it. I was very preoccupied by that. So that kind of magnetized itself to this story, and lots of other subjects, topics started to attract itself to it, exactly the one you started out with. Spaces, maternal spaces, also, depression, art, and the value of art. And I wanted to find a kind of novel or storytelling that would accommodate for those things, and that it would be okay for me to occasionally just insert a little meditation on, what's one of the little meditations in the book, like, on parenting, or, on helicopter parenting, or on, these other little mini topics, and be able to throw those into the book. And my hope is that the reader doesn't feel that those are distractions from the plot. Ironically, I think what I ended up with, though I was very much interested in all these ideas, I think ironically I ended up with like a sea adventure story, and which I love. I love that. And it's just, usually people start out looking for that, and then, but I kind of started with the ideas, and tried to animate and invest the story itself with what I care about. And so in terms of the narrative, there was a story in 2014 that a friend texted me about, and it was about a family that was sailing with their 2 children across the South Pacific when they started to take on water, and also actually one of the kids was sick, and they needed a Coast Guard rescue, and it was very dramatic and dangerous. And when they got back, they got a lot of criticism for being in that position. And it was a lot of that criticism is from people who don't realize that there actually are a lot of people, you know, raising their kids in non-traditional ways, or you can't see them. You can't see these sailors out on the sea, but they exist, and oftentimes everything's great. And there's no, it's only rarely where we get a tragedy. It does happen. And I just, my mind was like, for some reason, that image of that family, particularly a little like nuclear family, you know, parents, children, no one else, was on a, you know, traveling on a little boat across a vast sea, was just the plot I needed, that's all I needed. And of course, then I had to actually plot the thing as it went along via these, not to abuse nautical metaphors, but via waypoints, you know, in the story, and inch my way through that. And the form of the book continued to be just a big influence on the meaning as well, because I was stopping to write these little mini meditations on things. You know, Juliet and Michael both do a fair amount of, you know, kind of complaining about one another. There's some of that too. There's poetry and chunks of poetry. There's, as we go on, you know, delving into Juliet's past and a lot of, you know, some backstory and about how they met and where they started. So it was a cool writing experience. All I had was the boat moving across the sea, and I had this storm of thoughts in my mind and in the, you know, collective consciousness. There's so many things that have been you know, discussed at such a in such new ways, you know, sexual violence, for example, and all of that, and putting that into the work. I hope I answered your question. That was a long
You
answer.
did, although then it leads into the next question, which is, given that this sort of metaphor of a family in a small boat at sea, and we are essentially seem to be a nation at sea. I mean, part of the problem for them is that they are at various points out of their depth. I mean, there are a lot of current metaphors that are largely dead to us in language. We use them without thinking where they come from, but they come from the ocean. You know, we seem to be out of our depth. We are facing a crisis for which we were unprepared to navigate, and I mean, these are things. So I wonder whether now, in these past couple of months, just as your book, the beautiful books arrived, finished, bound, and as it comes out into the world, whether it feels different to you, or whether the resonance for you, I mean, because for me, rereading it, I read it last year, and so for me, rereading it, there were many wonderful things I was recognizing, and then I felt also that I was reading a slightly different book that was a commentary, both philosophically on our experiences as sort of nuclear families or pods, right? Pods in quarantine, but also more broadly as almost as a metaphor for our society, you know, and the struggles that our society is confronting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's, I think poetry, and I mean, whether I use poetry there really just as a stand-in for any form of art, has long been trying to explore difficulty and explore our range of feelings, which from the lowest to the highest. And it's a way, it's a good thing to go to at this moment. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. As I said, there's also, you know, we were so busy before. We were so busy. We were so, I mean, it's hard not to feel this crazy whiplash nostalgia about it all. But there were a lot of things we didn't have to confront. But right now, probably the biggest thing we have to confront is our shared existential position, you know, our mortality. And literature is really good at exploring that. And I think, of course, in specific, a kind of survival story, if this is part of that genre, it really literalizes that, because you're really hoping and rooting for and in suspense about what's going to happen to them. The vulnerability of somebody at sea is what makes us all, some of those of us who aren't real sailors, including me, very scared. You're like, ooh, I would never do that. I told her, and I did some sailing research. Oh, I would never do that. Then there's you go to another community, and hopefully that community will respond to me as well, but where they can't imagine anything else. And I think the attraction is, to me, to that family at sea is the sense of this externalizing or a literalizing of our vulnerability that we are always experiencing.
Yeah.
We were vulnerable before the coronavirus.
Of course.
We just didn't have to sit around and think about it.
Right.
And now we're in this weird place that we've almost been, you feel sometimes you've been put there to have to sit there and confront, the hardest thing, I think, probably for people, especially people who are alone probably, but is like 24-hour selfhood. It's how you confront.
because I mean, right? which is a really interesting thing, because it's framed differently in the novel, but it does become a time of no distractions, and being on the boat is also a time of no distractions. There's no cable TV, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no, you can't, and one of the things, I mean, it's a whole other conversation, but I feel we've had at least a decade and probably 20 years, and you could argue 50 or 100 years of ever growing, and in the last decade, fairly absolute distraction. That's something that is happening now, is that we are returned to ourselves, and it's not comfortable, and it's not comfortable for them, but it's also in many ways joyful for them.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's nice about the book is that they do have this experience of the beauty of nature. I mean, and for me these days, absolutely, that's my my greatest solace. But I'm just going to the park. I mean, they're out on this gorgeous terrain, and I did get the sort of honor of experiencing that when I was learning how to sail for the book. But I think I also had experience here and there sailing when I was a kid. Went on a trip. And I think it just captures the imagination as soon as you're out there, because it is such an extreme terrain, and it's so first of all, mostly beautiful, just beautiful. The color, the number of blues that you can encounter, a range of them there. The weather at sea is amazing, because it's so much. When you think about experiencing, say, like a thunderstorm in your house, and then like experiencing that on a boat in the open ocean, because not only are you vulnerable, but also you just see it. There's this horizon. There's no interruption, no like landmarks or trees, anything to break it. So the wind is strong, the rain is strong. And then when the sky clears after a storm, it's absolutely beautiful. So I think that the book, I got really into describing the weather and describing the sea. And I think that's one thing I enjoyed about writing it.
Well, I mean, just for those of you who haven't yet read it, I mean, one of the things that those descriptions are magnificent, but there's also, I mean, I think it's that you managed to do almost seamlessly so many things, and bring us the world that they experience, to give us essentially, as I said earlier, an existential novel that's about philosophical exploration, and at the same time, I feel it sounds like a cliche to say the suspense of a thriller, but it absolutely has the suspense of a thriller. And what we know at the beginning of the novel is that the family is not intact. That's really all that we know. And I wondered whether that when you said you had the plot, I wondered whether from the beginning, I wondered whether that understanding, because that is a sort of, those are craft decisions, as it were, when do you reveal what information? I wondered whether that suspense was always integral to your understanding of how the novel would unfold.
Yeah. Well, it's great to talk to another writer about this because you know how there's like best laid plans. You start with something and then it just changes. And I will say that no, I didn't know. I knew, of course. Listen, anytime you put a family on a boat at sea, there's something's going to happen. It's going to go with all
Something has to, right. Something has to happen. Yeah.
Something's going to happen. And I absolutely consciously went into it knowing that they were stressed. At the time I started it, it was not necessarily the political divisions between them cropped up later as I was writing, when I realized that it seemed to had come from who they were really, these temperamental philosophical differences, which I think are actually the same philosophical differences that separate us right now, which is a sort of independence, self-reliance, and a sort of a more of a collective minded, socially minded philosophy. But where was I in that? Shoot.
I too have followed your
So where I was gonna suspense. Right. So when I will, I think my husband might be listening downstairs, and if he is, then this is a little nod to him. He's my first reader, and when I was about a year or two into the book, I was writing it, and I wrote it in the same time frame. So Juliet and Michael were both on the boat at the same time. And I was enjoying it. There were still some things that were working about it, but I felt it really lacked tension. And I got I brought it to Tim. I was like, oh, yuck. I don't think this is working. And
Tim, who is listening, he's just put in the chat that he is listening.
Okay. Hi, honey. Said, sometimes you need somebody to make you, especially someone who really understands literature, to like help make you be like, why don't you try this weird thing? And I had wanted to try a weird thing. He was like, try it. That was basically, what he did. And I started putting them in different time frames. I had her recollecting things and him in the present. And then it's just like, made much more sense. My last novel, Schroeder, was also, I learned a sort of retrospective confessional of something that had happened in the past. And so I had felt some technical comfort with that. And I really, as soon as I put Juliet in that place of looking back, then everything started to work. And that's when the plot started to happen. Does that make sense?
Yes. Cool.
Right.
I think, I feel that the inextricability of form and content, right? I mean, that finding there are many ways to approach the writing of a novel, but it is like a Rubik's cube. Somehow everything has to kind of click in some way before it really, the plot and the form and the content are inseparable. They work together.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And I was absolutely what you said.
Amity, I'm suddenly realizing that, the time is whipping by and I could ask you questions for forever, but I have here, there are a number of people who have questions for you, and perhaps if you'd be willing, I might start sharing one or two. The first question is from Chris, who asks, do you read other authors while you write?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. I don't feel, I have heard people say that they, well, first of all, hi, Chris. Nice to meet you. I've heard people say, I don't know if you feel this way, Claire, but they get too influenced by things that they're reading. Does that happen to you? It doesn't really happen to me. I find it very useful to read things that are inspiring, that make me want to write, and make me want to learn from what those others are doing. I just felt that way about The Burning Girl, Claire's book that I just finished. Beautiful. I'm reading a lot of great things right now. And
are there a couple of you give us the names of? So I feel everybody's making lists because we all have a little more time for reading because we're not driving our cars anywhere.
Whoops. Yeah, sure. Just finished this, is it backwards for you?
No, it's right.
Okay.
It's backwards for you maybe, but it's right for us.
talk about playing with form. This is really amazing. Susan Choi. I loved this one. I'm ready. I'm ready for your question. And this is I mean, it's a kind of memoir about abuse, basically, but it's an incredibly beautiful book by Carmen Maria Machado, in the Dream House. Absolutely adored it. Poetry, sheer poetry. I read. You can see how this one's used from Politics and Prose, where I'm reading on Saturday. But I read N.W. by Zadie Smith. I'd never read her before. Before the quarantine, I was not teaching, and I wasn't. I had extra time, and I was starting a new project. And I think that I was very open to writing and to literature at that time. And I feel it, that we put our kids in front of screens in the evening and we read.
That you were starting a new project. Am I interrupting?
No.
Okay, because the next question is from Jennifer, who asks, have your reading or writing habits changed in recent months amidst the quarantine?
Yeah. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for that question. It makes me a little sad because yes, it's really, really, really changed. As you know, as anyone knows who has little kids at home, I do have a 7-year-old. I'm spending a large part of the day, teaching her about line plots and bar graphs and like these awful math problems that I never got back in the first place. My husband's a teacher, so he's often teaching during the day. So we're just, we're doing it together. And apropos of what we were saying before at the quarantine, I have to work a lot to not make it mean more than it is. This is a temporary, it's about survival, and it's about helping people who have so much less and who are so on the edge already, and then I try to walk back some of my other fears and complaints and about writing. And also, but I will say that when I read, especially in this kind of like nighttime reading, I do feel like I'm writing, and I feel like I'm really connected because I'm in conversation. I'm sure you feel that way too, Claire. You're like in conversation with somebody through a book. So I haven't, the pilot light is still on. The pilot light has not gone off on my writing or on my my thinking life.
I do, I try to hang on to, I said to my students, if you live life like a writer, nothing is wasted. Because you're always observing. It's like being a Buddhist. You're always observing and you're always curious. So, so even if the actual writing itself is somehow in abeyance, that you're gaining other things, whether reading or in the experiences. I don't envy you. My kids are big enough. They need well, my son is in high school, so he does math. My daughter is never going to take math again, I don't think. But I couldn't help my son with his math anyway, so we're well beyond anything I could help with. So I'm sort of exonerated there. I don't have to get involved. I do not envy you doing math with your daughter. I'm sorry. May I ask? I have another question. This is from Jen, who asks, "Your book jacket is absolutely gorgeous. Is there a story behind it?"
Oh, there is. Thanks, Jen. What a great question, because it is actually really nice to talk about a story, because it involves Sunny Mehta, the late head of Knopf. So when this book first was being designed, I saw an early version of the jacket that was, this image was actually always present, but it was very different script, and I thought very sweet and nice script, and I was like, I love it, and that's all it was. And then apparently my editor Jordan Pavlin, she and Sunny were talking about it, and he redesigned it. He's like, get rid of that silly script, and I wasn't there, I'm imagining it, and make it bigger. And also then he added this water here, which is so cool, right? I remember when I first saw it, I was like, really? But then it's so cool that right away it makes you wonder, is it a splash? Is it tears? Is it what, and so it's beautifully done. It's a beautiful object. I'm not just saying that.
And those amazing end papers, did you ask for those or did they volunteer?
They volunteered.
Cool.
I know, big time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so was it an artist at the publishing house who did the map?
Yeah, I don't know the person's name, but I should, but it's really beautifully done. I did participate in giving some of this as an area that follows their journey, just to help you a little bit about where they are in the world. But it's also just beautiful to look at. It's nice to have a book that there's like little bells and whistles. And in the back of the book too, there's this back matter, the extra stuff that didn't fit into the regular book. So you get this kind of like extra chunk of text at the end.
It's, I feel, just a little plug while I do feel, as we're returning, as everything is quiet in the world and we return to nature and so on, there's also the materiality of things, and the physical pleasures of a book are so particular. I feel this is incredibly sensually pleasing. It's beautiful to look at. It's also beautiful to hold. It's made with really lovely paper. You got a deckled edge, my friend. Even a deckled edge is so beautiful, right? I feel like there's been really lovely attention paid to the physical book, which is part of the delight to enjoy along the way. There are a couple more questions. So here's one from Ken. And Ken asks, do you have a lot of experience sailing yourself? It sounds like you're quite familiar with the topic. Did you draw from personal experience while writing this book?
Thanks for the question, Ken. I write about this elsewhere. If you're interested in an amusing essay on Coastal Living, the magazine just published it. And it's a little bit about my mishaps in learning how to sail. But I did have this kind of childhood experience of going on a long sail in the Caribbean. I was only 12 and I was out there for a month and with a family who had a boat. And I think that was quite formative. But then when I went back to what used to be called the San Blas, or still is called San Blas, but as Gunayala is the name of the sovereign territory. I went there with my son when he was 9, and we were sailing. We were on a chartered boat, so I didn't sail, but this other couple hosted us, and this was the most beautiful place I'd been to. It was, and I hadn't seen it. It's just along the coast of Panama, and I hadn't seen it on my previous journey to the Caribbean, and it's a very remote place because the people that live there don't believe in commerce. They don't sell the islands and they don't allow people to buy them. So I felt blessed to be there. It was my notion of paradise, which was definitely an influence, and of course paradise, it's also the place you get kicked out of, but it was the first time I'd seen that kind of paradise. I think when you sail, you see things, you can come into places in new ways, ports and places where there aren't other people, and you can also have access to places that you can't get to otherwise. So it really is a sense of aloneness when you think like, you're crowded or you go on those hiking trails and stuff. There are still very much ways to be alone, and that's the sea. So I did have to learn how to sail. It's a long story, but I did take a 10-day sailing course while I was writing this book, and took and was active in trying to learn the names of the sheets and the stanchions and the chalk blocks and the terminology. I read a great deal of books, and then actually had to enact that on the sailing course. And the secret is I actually failed the sailing course. So you think if you pay for it, they should at least let you pass, but I guess that's dangerous.
Was there a certificate you didn't get then?
I got the baby certificate, you came, yay, but I didn't get the certificates that's you could captain a boat, right, which is for the best. But it was an amazing experience and very humbling, because I learned, as I was saying, talking about the sea and the passion and the changeability of the sea. I could not have learned that if I hadn't gone sailing.
We have time, I think, for one last question. which is, could you identify one key tip? This is from Janice. Could you identify one key tip for an aspiring author to succeed?
Thank you, Janice, for the question. I would say, from my personal experience, it is a really special thing to see yourself as part of a larger project of literature and of writing beautiful things. And you're just one person out of many who's trying to do that, because it's both inspiring because you feel like you're kind of in your tribe and you're in a worthwhile endeavor, but also it helps to blunt a little bit of the rejection and the disappointment that invariably comes. And so I've made it kind of a sort of spiritual stance for me to get through the good and bad times, to be like, I'm part of this like river, river of literature. That's helped me a great deal.
The drop in the ocean, right? There's a drop.
I'm a drop in the ocean. Exactly. Maybe that's what it is.
That's a beautiful thing to say, and I think it's really true. Yeah, I think especially in this time, where we are in isolation. Some people are entirely alone, but all of us are isolated from one another, and literature really does connect us. And I think about that. I think that's what it always does.
Yeah.
Is it connects people who are alone. Right?
Yeah.
You read alone. You don't read maybe sometimes you read something aloud in a group, but basically you're reading alone. But when you're reading, you're connected with the entire, not just with the writer, but with the entire community of people who are reading the book or have read the book, with whom you might sometime talk about the book. Mm-hmm. It's an extraordinary connection. So it's been, Amity, such a gift to be connected with you this evening, to be connected with this wonderful novel, which I urge everyone to use the link I think that you've been given, and to order this book if you haven't already got hold of a copy. Amity, thank you
so much. Claire, thank you so much for your support of me for years, and your wisdom has helped me so much through thick and thin. You're a very generous person. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for coming out tonight. You didn't come out, you stayed in, but but thanks for those of you who came, and thanks so much. Please support books, and bookshop.org is a great place to buy.
And Harvard Bookstore. Thanks to Harvard Bookstore for hosting us. And John, thank you to you.
Thank you, John.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Amity. Thank you to Claire. It's been such a fun conversation. And I think you said it all. Look to find the book. I've dropped the link down in the chat there. And as a reminder, you can find both speakers' catalogs from your local bookstore at bookshop.org. So yeah, thanks to you. Thanks everyone. And have a great night.
Bye. Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.